Hey everyone, it's Kenji, and I'm putting together a lasagna because it's the middle of the summer and lasagna is super appropriate right now. No, I'm doing it because I actually had a lot of stuff that seemed to go well into lasagna. I had a bunch of sausage left over in the fridge, some like raw Italian sausage that was on the verge of going bad, so I turned it into a sausage and tomato ragu that I have over here. So essentially all I did was, well, let me get started with the lasagna first. Well, I'm going to show you the way I generally assemble a lasagna, and this is definitely not a the real traditional lasagna bolognese, which is made with typically made with a spinach flavored pasta, a green pasta, and a ragu bolognese, and a bechamel. This is sort of an American hybrid lasagna made with a Italian-American sausage ragu, some ricotta that I made from milk that was about to go sour, and I'll probably do a bechamel as well. So these are oven-ready burrito. There's a few different companies that make them. I actually find the burrito ones to be just fine, although normally the burrito pasta is not great, but their oven-ready lasagna is fine. I prefer using this. Oh, by the way, I'm talking quietly because my daughter's asleep. I prefer the oven-ready lasagna to the sort of wavy, dry ones that you have to parboil because, first of all, it's easier. Secondly, it is a lot more similar to real fresh pasta. So if I'm not going to make fresh pasta, which I sometimes do for lasagna, I'm going to use this oven-ready stuff. The trick is that it's not actually oven-ready. What happens is if you try and put your sauce and layer it with this oven-ready stuff and just throw it in the oven and bake, it does soften up, but it also ends up absorbing a lot of the liquid from your sauce, so your sauce comes out kind of dry. So the trick is to soak it, and this is a trick actually I learned when I was working at Cooks Illustrated, I don't know, like 15 years ago. The trick is to soak it in sort of lukewarm water while you prepare your other ingredients. That way it absorbs water, and then it cooks later on in the pasta. So I also have this sausage ragu going here, which is essentially I had some Italian sausage that was about to go off. I had some ground beef left over from some hamburgers that was also about to go off. So I cooked that down with olive oil, browned it, broke it up, and then I added diced onion, diced carrot, some minced garlic, and then a big splash of red wine, dry red wine, and then finally a can of whole peeled Italian San Marzano tomatoes. All right, so for our bechamel, we're going to start with some butter. It's like 2 tablespoons of butter, maybe 2.5 tablespoons of butter. And then I apologize for the mess. We're reorganizing the whole kitchen, so there's a bunch of stuff out. Yeah, I apologize for that, but I don't apologize too much. So for this one, you want a pan, relatively low heat. I was preheating this over relatively low heat for a while, because you want a nice even heat on this pan. You don't want any hot and cool spots because you don't want that butter to accidentally burn in places, and you really want your flour to cook gently. So bechamel, Italian, is the same as a bechamel in French, or white sauce in English. Butter, equal parts butter and flour. So in this case, that's about 2.5 tablespoons of butter, 2.5 tablespoons of flour, and we're going to cook this. Whisk it all together and cook it just until basically like the raw flour flavor goes away. You can sort of smell it, like there's a kind of aroma that raw flour has that as it cooks away, it I don't know, it starts to smell cooked. So you don't want to take this to like the sort of, you don't want it to really brown at all. I mean, unless you do, but most of the time, most people don't want their bechamel to brown. You just want the flour to not taste raw anymore. And so we're cooking that a little bit, and then we get our milk. So the basic ratio for a classic sort of bechamel is a tablespoon of butter, a tablespoon of flour to a cup of milk. And in grams, that's some measurement of butter to some measurement of flour to a different measurement of milk. You can do the conversions yourself. But, you know, spoons to cups, that's about what it is. It doesn't really matter too much. You can kind of always adjust it at the end. All right. Oh, the last, while that cooks a little bit, the last element I have for this is this ricotta, which it's actually more of sort of a farmer's cheese because I made it. So what I had was milk. Everything in here is stuff that was about to go bad. What I had was milk that was starting to go close to sour. Starting to get a little bit sour. So it was at that point where when you pour it into your coffee, it starts to curdle a little bit, but it's not curdled in the container. That milk, when it's at that point, don't throw it out and don't use it for your coffee. What you should do is make ricotta out of it. So all you have to do is put it in a saucepan and heat it up very gently while stirring. And you want to get it to around you'll see it happening. You'll see the curds starting to form, and by around 160 to 170 degrees, the curds have formed sort of a layer on top, and you can see that there's whey. You know, the clear whey has separated out. And then you just drain it in a fine mesh strainer. You can save the whey and use it as the liquid in a loaf of bread or pizza dough if you'd like, or you can just get rid of the whey. But the curds, you drain them. And that's your bechamel. I'm gonna that's your ricotta. This ricotta, I'm gonna actually just thin it out a tiny bit. You can thin it out with heavy cream. I'm gonna thin this out with just a touch of yogurt because I like that flavor. We'll do yogurt, and by the way, Italian, a bolognese lasagna does not have ricotta in it typically. This is sort of an Italian-American addition. But very commonly in the US you're going to see ricotta in a lasagna, so I'm going to use it. And then a little bit of milk just to... There we go. You get a nice kind of saucy consistency. When you're making a lasagna, I always find that you want everything a little bit looser than you think it should be, because as it bakes, the lasagna, even when you pre-soak the lasagna noodles are going to soak up liquid. And of course, moisture is going to get driven off as it bakes. All right, so this flour mixture is just about done. I'm going to get a measuring cup. Not because I really care about precise measurements, but mainly because I want something with a thin spout so that I can slowly pour my milk in. But I'm going to do about 2 cups here. The key to getting a smooth bechamel is really slow additions of milk. So it can go a little bit hotter here. So if you add it too fast, the flour clumps up. So you want to make sure that you add it like a couple tablespoons at a time, and whisk it until it becomes like a sort of homogeneous texture before you add any more milk. That way you guarantee that it doesn't clump on you. And it'll start out real thick, like mashed potatoes. There are a few sort of classic Italian, well, 2 major classic Italian lasagnas. If you go to Italy and you ask for lasagna without any qualifiers, it is pretty much assumed that you're talking about lasagna bolognese, which is a fresh spinach pasta. Doesn't have to be spinach, but usually a fresh spinach pasta. So a green pasta that's layered with ragu bolognese and bechamel. But there's also lasagna napoletana, which is a lasagna that's made with regular wheat noodles, flour noodles, that are layered with a tomato sauce, mozzarella, sausage, little meatballs, and hard-boiled eggs. Comes from southern Italy, from Napoli. So lasagna napoletana. I think it's eaten at like holidays around there. In the U.S., when you say lasagna, it's funny, you know, like, so in the U.S., I would say the lasagna I was familiar with growing up was either tomato sauce or meat sauce. And by, you know, when we say meat sauce, we don't mean a real ragu bolognese. We mean like usually like hamburger that's, you know, ground meat that's simmered, ground meat that's browned in a saucepan, then a can of tomato sauce dumped on it. And that would be your meat sauce, layered with ricotta and lots of mozzarella cheese. It would either be that or just plain tomato sauce and ricotta with mozzarella cheese. Although when we first moved to California, we had some neighbors, some good friends of ours who invited us to their house for lasagna. And what they called lasagna was, they were from Chicago. What they called lasagna was what I would call baked ziti. So it was like, you know, ziti, tubular pasta, baked with sort of like all the elements of an Italian-American lasagna. So with ricotta and mozzarella and meat sauce. And they called that lasagna. And I don't know, it was delicious. Definitely not what I would think of as lasagna, but you know what? Like, what I call ragu bolognese on this channel is definitely not what an Italian would call ragu bolognese. So who am I to judge when someone else uses a term that I don't quite understand? All right, so you saw I've been adding that in slow additions. And give this a nice pinch of salt. Oh, the other thing that I put into this this sausage ragu is that I had a bunch of Parmesan rinds. I had a couple Parmesan rinds, so I stuck those in there too, just for flavor. So yeah, when you finish off your block of Parmesan, like grate it all off, and you have that hard crust at the end, simmer it. And you can simmer it in sauce, you can simmer it in soup, add some really nice flavor to there. I'm telling you, this whole thing is like leftovers and odds and ends. All right. So this is I'm gonna whisk this as it thickens up. I'm gonna move these. Yeah, they're softening up nicely. Just gonna move them around a little bit to make sure they're not stuck to each other. They seem okay. Oop, one broke, that's all right. Oh, the other thing I need here, nutmeg. Nutmeg. Where's my microplane? Okay. We're gonna grate some nutmeg into here on the microplane. I would say probably about a quarter teaspoon, freshly grated. If you're using the pre-ground stuff, I would probably use a half teaspoon because it's not going to be as flavorful. And I'm going to leave this bechamel basically as is. I'm not going to add any cheese or anything to that, although you certainly can if you want. Actually, you know what? Maybe I will add a little bit of cheese. I've got this, what do I got? I got queso Oaxaca in here. Too much of it, so I'm gonna... So when you're adding cheese to your bechamel, what you want to do is you want to let it... So your bechamel will thicken. The flour doesn't fully thicken until it really sort of comes to a simmer. And you'll see it start to thicken up. I mean, you can see it here. It gets thicker and thicker as it heats up, and by the time it comes to a full simmer, that's when it's basically at its absolute thickest. And once it hits that point, you can add cheese. So you could add, you know, like a mountain of sort of grated Parmesan or Pecorino. You could add mozzarella. I mean, really any cheese that you want will work. Although, you know, if you're going to be layering this with meat sauce, something like that, generally I would stick to either something like a Parmesan or a sort of neutral cheese like a mozzarella. I wouldn't go into like, you know, blue cheese territory, which you certainly can do. You can do that if you want. All right, we're getting nice and thick now. Yeah. All right, I think this is going to be delicious. Okay, now you can see it's sort of bubbling around the edges. That's about as far as I need to go before I can start adding my cheese. And I'll probably add, I don't know, half a cup of this. shredded stuff, a few ounces. Okay, and then you turn the heat down to low. You don't want to overcook that cheese because it could potentially turn it sort of stringy. Although in a bechamel, cheese will melt pretty nicely because there's so much starch in there and so much viscosity that it makes emulsifying even sort of the stringiest of cheeses relatively easy to do. But you can let sort of once it comes up there, just hit it to the lowest possible heat and let mainly the residual heat of the pan and the sauce melt your cheese for you, where you don't really run any risk of it clumping up and turning stringy. All right. Let's taste it. That tastes good. Okay, now we're ready to assemble. Okay, I'm gonna drain out this pasta. Okay. Got some clutter right here today. Okay. Get this onto a cutting board. All right, so I'll start with a little bit of some sauce at the bottom. Not too much. Layers of noodles, 2 and 3. Now some more sauce. Get some of this ricotta mixture. And some more sauce. Or some bechamel. Now we just repeat that. So the ordering I do, and I don't know that this is like canon or whatever, but the ordering that I do is sauce, sort of the tomatoey or meat-based sauce on the bottom. And then after that, every layer I do noodles, sauce, dairy, whatever the dairy element may be. So it could be, if I feel like I'm making it with like, sometimes I make it with no bechamel, like I'll make it with just grated cheese, in which case I would do sauce and grated cheese, or sauce then ricotta. But it's always, bottom is just sauce, then layers of noodle sauce dairy, and then you always finish the top layer with just bechamel. But actually, you know what? I don't even always do that. Sometimes I like to add a little bit of the tomatoey sauce at the top as well. Okay, and that last layer, we just want to make sure all the noodles are kind of coated in bechamel so that they don't, even if they're not, it's actually not that big a deal. They just kind of crisp up and brown, which is fine because crispy brown lasagna is delicious. But there you go. All right. Now, we're not gonna eat this till tomorrow, so I'm gonna actually wrap it up put it in the fridge, and tomorrow I'll be back to bake it. So I'll be back in about 18 hours or so. So I had this in foil overnight in the fridge. That's it. Actually, that's one we can reuse. And now I have an oven preheated to 375, and this is going to go in there uncovered for about 45 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to get that going. Set a timer for 45 minutes, and I will be back about 45 minutes. Ooh, that's looking good. All right, let me grab my towel. Look at that, lasagna. Perfect for a hot summer day. I love the way it gets brown and puffy. All right, so I would recommend waiting about 15 minutes before you cut into this to allow it a little bit of time to sort of set. I would recommend that, which is why I'm just going to cut straight in. I'm dividing this in half because I'm giving my neighbors half of it. All right, let me grab a little. I'm gonna grab the corner piece for me to taste right now. Whew. Oh, that's hot. See those nice layers? Yes, Shabu, you see them. All right, I'm gonna set this little piece aside for you, Shabu, because I know you're gonna want it, and I want it to cool down before I give it to you. And that one for Hamon. This is, man, lasagna is good. You know, I don't know if any of you noticed, excuse this giant garbage bag here full of stuff we're throwing out from the kitchen. If you've noticed how bad of a comic strip Garfield is. But the one thing he gets right is that lasagna is good. Here you go, Hamon. Shabu. Yes. Sit. You're already sitting. Good girl. All right. Oh, good. Let me pull this lasagna over to the door so I can get a beauty shot of it in the nice lighting over there. And you can all marvel in its glory. Look at that thing. That looks good to me. I would eat that. In fact, I am going to eat that. This is going to be our dinner. All right. See you later, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Next time.